Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Joanna Ho. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Long queues at government clinics after private doctors turn away COVID patients. Kai Tak will be home to more than 10,000 light public housing units. And Hong Kong's exchange fund records its biggest annual decline. Hong Kong has entered a new phase of its post-COVID era, with infected individuals no longer having to isolate at home from today. They can go and seek help from doctors, but not all physicians welcome them with open arms. With COVID patients no longer needing quarantine, people who wish to take leave from work must obtain a doctor's certificate from today. But the process is harder than it sounds. Among 8 general practitioners we visited in Sheung-Wan, 2 refused to see COVID patients. Family doctor Edmund Lam, who's among hundreds of private doctors that admit individuals infected with COVID, explains the possible reasons behind. He said older practitioners or those who live with elderly family members may be worried of getting infected. Others, he believed, might be tied up with COVID vaccination services and do not have the capacity to see extra patients. But he noted in general, doctors are now more willing to see infected patients than before. Those who are turned away by private doctors can still head to a government clinic. Anticipating growing demand, the hospital authority raised the consultation quota at its general outpatient clinics from 7,500 to 10,000 a day. 1/5 or 2,000 of the slots are reserved for COVID patients. But advocacy group Hong Kong Patients' Voices feared it might be a bad idea to have COVID-positive people mingle with other patients in the same clinic.
Normally, it would be the elderly who may make use of the service in the general patient clinic. The elderly are vulnerable to COVID. So you can imagine that if you put 2 patients, COVID and non-COVID patient within the same clinic, that would be a risk.
Lam also warned that doctors who refuse to treat COVID patients may violate the Code of Professional Conduct and face disciplinary actions. He urged the Medical Association to advise their members to fulfill their duty by providing the necessary treatment to patients, especially those with serious infectious diseases. The government says that half of the light public housing units will be situated in urban areas, including 10,000 of them in Kai Tak. Concessions were also made in a bid to drive down costs. Janice Low reports.
After much fanfare, the government finally offered a glimpse into its light public housing unit, a major initiative in the chief executive's policy address.
The government says this unit can fit up to 5 people, but it doesn't come with a bedroom. Future tenants who wish to have some privacy may have to spend some money on partitions, or else they will all sleep here in a dormitory-like setting.
This model flat measures 330 square feet in size, near the upper range of light public housing units. It costs only $2,650 a month to rent, about 90% of the rate for traditional public housing. Each of them is equipped with an individual toilet and water heater, as well as an open kitchen. But tenants have to get most appliances themselves, including air conditioners, as the government aims to drive down costs. 4 initial sites have been earmarked for the project, 2 in Tuen Mun and 1 each in Yuen Long and Sheung-Shui. Following criticism that they are too remote, authorities have now introduced 4 other sites. Except for the one in Siu Lam, the new plots in Kai Tak, Ngau Tau Kok, and Chai Wan are all in urban areas. The site on Olympic Avenue in Kai Tak, considered a prime piece of real estate with its proximity to commercial districts, will even provide the most units.
This site is 5.7 hectares in area, and we will build about 10,700 light public housing units in this site. The ground floor will be supporting facilities. Above that, there will be about 16 to 18 story of light public housing units.
They will be part of 30,000 units to be rolled out, with the first batch to be completed by 2024 to 25 at the earliest. Housing Chief Joanna Ho said that while the flats are offered on a transitional basis, they are built to last.
Design-wise, they are all designed for 50 years. Because of the building code. In Hong Kong, we have typhoon. We have very strong typhoon up to typhoon number 10. These buildings have to withstand all these adverse weather.
She also assured the project will not hinder the long-term development of the occupied sites, as a review will be conducted after 5 years. Janice Low, HKIBC.
A sailor was killed in a fire on board a cargo vessel early this morning. The mainland registered vessel was transiting in Hong Kong when it was rocked by an explosion. 2 fireboats raced to the scene of Llama Island, while the government flying service joined in the operation. The blaze was put out 2 hours later. A 51-year-old man was found in the engine room with burns. The mainland resident was certified dead at the scene. 12 other crew were uninjured. An initial investigation suggested foul play was involved. Overseas, more than 24 people have been killed in an explosion at a mosque in the northwestern Pakistani city of Peshawar. The blast occurred at a time when large numbers of worshippers had gathered for prayer. Around 150 others were also injured. No one has claimed responsibility as of yet, and Peshawar's police chief said it was possibly a suicide bomber. Peshawar is the capital of a province bordering Afghanistan, which has experienced frequent turmoil. This included a suicide bomb attack at a mosque last March that killed 64 people. Also in Pakistan, 10 school children were killed and 3 others are still in critical condition after a boat they were in capsized in a lake northwest of the country. This came on the same day more than 40 people were killed in a bus accident further south. Asam Khan reports.
Aided by the military, rescue efforts were still underway hours after the accident. Tragedy struck when a boat carrying 25 students had capsized in a lake in northwest Pakistan. At least 10 students, aged 7 to 12, had drowned, with several still missing and 6 others taken to hospital. Around 50 students were on a school trip and gathered around Tanda Lake for a picnic. Half of them ventured out on the water by hopping onto the boat, which eventually capsized. Local officials believe the accident was caused by overloading.
16 patients हम लोगों ने receive किए.
This supervisor at the hospital, where the victims were sent, said 3 of the 6 boys who were rescued remain in intensive care but are stable otherwise. The tragedy occurred on the same day a bus crashed into a ravine in the south of the country, killing at least 41 people, including children. Azam Khan, HKIBC.
Residents of Auckland are coming to terms after witnessing one of the worst floods in New Zealand's history. But it may be too early to survey the damage as more heavy rain is expected in the coming days. Sachin Cafe reports.
After witnessing one of its wettest weekends in nearly a century, Auckland residents are bracing for more bad weather this week. The city was inundated after receiving 40% of the average annual rainfall in just a couple of days. The downpours sent hillsides crashing down, forcing people to evacuate. Schools have been turned into shelters to accommodate displaced residents. Even the upscale suburb of Remuera was not spared as buildings suffered extensive damage. As floodwaters receded, residents tried to salvage whatever belongings they could. Many households lost everything and communities helped each other with the cleanup, which could go on for days. The natural disaster dealt another blow to New Zealand's already fragile economy, which is trying to get on its feet after being hit hard by COVID. Recovery and rebuilding could also worsen inflation, which at 7.2% is already the highest in decades. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins, who only assumed office last week, is already facing the first major challenge. He toured Auckland to assess the damage. 4 people have died so far, and all schools in the city are closed until next week, as heavy rains are expected in the days to come. Sachin Karpi, HKIBC.
Hong Kong's exchange fund has reported a loss of $202.4 billion last year, the worst annual performance on record. Monetary Authority Chief Executive Eddie Yu blamed an exceptionally volatile year in the financial markets for the rout. Investments on Hong Kong equities saw a deficit of nearly $20 billion. Other equities lost $61 billion and $53 billion for bonds. There was also a foreign exchange translation loss of $40 billion and a negative investment return of 4.4%, the second worst record in history.
Looking ahead in 2023, financial markets will continue to face significant uncertainties, and asset prices are expected to remain volatile. But on a more positive note, with the relaxation of COVID prevention measures and the introduction of economic stimulus measures in China, the mainland economy may rebound strongly this year. With the market expectation of slowing inflation and more gradual rate hikes, bond investments have become more appealing, giving investors a higher interest income as yields of major government bonds currently stand at multi-year high.
Hong Kong stocks closed sharply lower today as a tepid market recovery fizzled and wiped out earlier gains. Despite mainland equities entering bull territory, the benchmark Hang Seng Index took a hit and closed 2.7% lower. Tech shares lead the tumble. Alibaba nosedived 7% on rumors of the e-commerce platform shifting its global headquarters to Singapore. Tencent slid 6.6% after Citigroup estimated fourth quarter earnings to drop 1.9%. JD.com finished 5.5% lower. The company curtailed its overseas expansion plans by shutting down operations in Thailand and Indonesia. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down 619 points. To the top 10 active stocks, Tencent was down $27.80, Alibaba down $8.30. Ping An down $3.30, BYD Company down $6.60. To the forex trading against the Hong Kong dollar, euros at 8.53, pounds at 9.7, and Australian dollar at 5.54. Over to the UK market, FTSE 100 is up 8 points. Stocks of the business empire run by Indian billionaire Gautam Adani continued their downfall despite a lengthy rebuttal from the company. New York-based Hindenburg Research had published a scathing report against Adani Group last week. The short seller accused the group of engaging in stock manipulation and fraud schemes in the past decades. In a 413-page response, Adani Group called the report a calculated attack on India. Days of sell-off has now erased nearly $72 billion of value of Adani. Hindenburg said most of the questions remain unanswered, adding the Indian conglomerate is systematically looting the nation under the guise of patriotism. On to the weather now. It will be overcast with sunny intervals tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 14 and 19 degrees. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Monday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Joanna Ho. Thanks for watching. Good night.